Captain Xander stared out the viewport of the Terran science vessel Prometheus as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The familiar pinpricks of the stars resolved themselves, comforting sight after days spent in the featureless gray limbo of FTL space. "Entering Vulpila Answer 47 system," so reported the pilot. "Setting course for research platform XR1. "Very good," replied Xander. His eyes sought out the research platform, a spindly construct of spheres and cylinders orbiting the system's lonely ice giant. Even at this distance, he could see the enormous solar panels drinking in the wan starlight, powering the facility's arcane experiments. What were they working on out here, at the edge of known space? The intercom crackled. "Commander Xander, please report to Lab 37. "Commander Xander to Lab 37. The voice was clipped and businesslike. What had Kane discovered now? The chief scientist got especially taciturn whenever he was on the verge of a major breakthrough. Xander hoped this particular summons meant the 4-month voyage out here hadn't been for nothing. The lab door irised open at Xander's approach. Kane looked up from a console, smiled briefly. "Take a look at these readings," he said. Xander crossed the room, peered over the scientist's shoulder. Streams of data cascaded down the screen, spectrographic analyses and quantum wavelength charts. It meant nothing to Xander. "I assume you didn't call me here just to show off your shiny graphs, Doctor." Kane rolled his eyes. "We just built a Casimir vacuum oscillator that achieved a 12% conversion efficiency." Xander felt his pulse quicken despite himself. A vacuum oscillator. But the Casimir effect doesn't produce usable energy levels. Every lab that's tried ran out of funding before they made it economically viable. Every human lab, yes, Kane stood, began to pace. The Vulpeculans discovered a loophole in traditional Casimir platform engineering. It allows for stable energy production an order of magnitude beyond anything we've developed. A Casimir oscillator, tapping the quantum foam of spacetime itself for unlimited, free energy. It could power a ship forever, without fuel. The implications set Xander's mind racing. "Have you tested it?" Kane nodded. "Low-power trials only, but so far it's performing well above expectations." Xander let out a low whistle. The military applications alone were staggering. Whoever controlled this technology would possess a critical advantage over their rivals. A NASA tech like Kane wouldn't think about such things, but Xander needed to get this information to HiCom as soon as possible. "We need to send a high-priority courier back through the relay network. Can you package up your data?" "Already archived and compressed." "I figured Command might take an interest." Kane extracted a data crystal, handed it to Xander with the reverence of a priest entrusting holy relics. Xander tucked the precious crystal away carefully, secured it with his identity codes. Back on the cramped bridge, Xander quickly drafted a priority message to Fleet Command: energy breakthrough, Casimir oscillator W high conversion efficiency. Vulpeculan discovery, physicist Kane reverse engineered. Request immediate dispatch of security ships to answer system ASAP. Xander stared at the blinking cursor for a long moment before hitting send. Once HiCom got their hands on this, things might escalate quickly. He thought of the peaceful avian researchers on platform XR1, with no clue of the chain reaction they'd unwittingly kicked off. No use worrying about it now, though. Xander had given his report the gears of the great machine would turn with or without him. 3 months later, Xander was back aboard Prometheus as the ship slowly circled research platform XR1. Only this time, a dozen heavily armed frigates surrounded them, an incongruous escort for the lightly armed science vessel. Xander watched a shuttle detach from the nearest ship and begin its descent toward the station's docking ring. Kane watched it too, drumming his fingers nervously on the railing. "Remind me why your fleet friends are here again," he asked acidly. "Because we made a scientific breakthrough that has nothing whatsoever to do with humanity's territorial pissing contests." Xander sighed. Kane was a brilliant physicist but also hopelessly naive about interstellar realpolitik. "You discovered the secret to unlimited energy generation," he explained patiently. "You honestly believe the Vulpeculans intended to share that technology freely with a rival species. Now that we have the oscillator design, they'll have no choice but to deal fairly." Kane didn't look convinced, but said nothing more as the shuttle angled toward the research platform's docking ring. "This is a diplomatic mission," said Xander reassuringly. "Nothing to worry about." He hoped that was true. In fact, HFY's orders had been infuriatingly vague: secure Casimir oscillator prototypes and research materials using any means necessary. The term casus belli had been invoked more than once by the Admiral during his briefing. Xander didn't like it, but orders were orders. The comm unit sputtered to life. "Answer control to unidentified shuttle. You do not have clearance to dock. Please transmit authorization codes or withdraw to a safe distance." No response from the silent shuttle. It drew inexorably closer to the station's open docking ring, burned its thrusters to match velocity. Xander keyed the transmitter. "XR-1, this is Commander Xander aboard the Prometheus. Stand by to receive classified HFY orders regarding your station's status." An anxious pause. "Understood, Prometheus. Standing by." Xander turned to Kane. "I need to meet my team in the hangar bay. You coming?" The physicist was pale, a muscle twitching along his prominent jaw. After a moment, he nodded curtly. "Yeah, I should at least document what happens to my work." What happened, thought Xander grimly, was likely to be unpleasant. Humanity wasn't used to being denied what it considered rightfully theirs, and HFY considered the oscillator very much theirs now. He hoped Answer Control cooperated fully with the incoming security team. Diplomats were poor dancers compared to Fleet Marines. "Welcome to XR-1, Captain. I am Station Director Varen. How may I assist the Terran fleet?" The Vulpeculan station manager appeared remarkably calm for someone facing imminent arrest. The Saudi Marine commander with Xander seemed disappointed by Varen's lack of resistance. "By order of Earthfleet HFY, I am placing this station under military occupation due to suspected development of illegal technologies," barked the Marine. "All research personnel aboard XR-1 are to consider themselves under arrest until our investigation is complete." Varen's feathers ruffled slightly. "Illegal technologies? I assure you our work falls well within interstellar security guidelines." Xander stepped forward before the Marine decided to demonstrate Earthfleet guidelines using his magnetic carbine. "Perhaps this is simply a misunderstanding," soothed Xander. "If you cooperate fully, I'm certain we can resolve this confusion quickly." The avian eyed him shrewdly. Xander tensed. Varen seemed to reach some internal decision, his feathers smoothed in acquiescence. "Of course. The Terran fleet is welcome to review our equipment and data archives here on the platform. You will find our work quite innocuous, I assure you." His tone turned wry. "We Vulpeculans prefer research to warfare." The Marine commander looked skeptical, but holstered his weapon grudgingly. Varen led them from the cramped terminal into the station's primary cylinder. "Most of our labs are on the inner rings," he explained. "I hope you do not experience vertigo, as the view can be quite extreme." He tapped a membrane and the corridor's inner wall became transparent. Xander caught his breath. He'd seen holograms of Vulpeculan space stations, but the dizzying sweep of windows revealing open space was still unnerving. XR-1's central shaft vanished hundreds of meters above and below, the far wall barely discernible. Surrounding them in all directions were rotating rings of labs, apartments and micrograv greenhouses, rattling by at blurring speed. Kane had drifted to the transparent wall, gazing raptly out at the vortex of activity whirling around them. For a moment his earlier apprehension seemed forgotten. The scientist in him couldn't help admiring the station's graceful utility. The Marine commander was less impressed. "Enough sightseeing, Bird," he growled. "Take us to the lab holding the humans' oscillator prototypes." Varen's head swiveled sharply at that. "Oscillator prototypes? We have no such devices aboard XR-1. "Oh hell." Xander exchanged an ominous look with the Marine. This didn't bode well for a friendly occupation. "Impossible," raged Kane. "The data couldn't simply vanish. It has to reside on one of XR-1's storage nodes." He tapped rapidly at the lab console wreathed in holograms, scanning rapidly through petabytes of Vulpeculan research archives. Station Director Varen watched Kane's efforts bleakly. The avian stood perfectly still aside from an occasional frustrated flick of his tail feathers. The Marine guards had forced him to surrender access to XR-1's systems, yet so far the sweep for Vulpeculan military tech had turned up nothing but terraforming technologies and biofuel research. The promised oscillator data seemed to have disappeared completely. "I warned you," rasped Varen after another fruitless hour passed. "This wild allegation of illegal weapon research has no basis in fact." Feathers drooping, he turned to Xander imploringly. "Scan our databases. Inspect all you wish. You will find no sign of this oscillator or any other banned technology. Perhaps there was simply a misunderstanding regarding your scientists' experiments." Kane snarled without looking up from his diagnostics. "The only misunderstanding was thinking your people intended to share knowledge and foster trust." His fingers flew across the console interface as he sliced viciously through encrypted partitions. "But it doesn't matter. I'll find the hidden archives no matter where you squirreled them away." "Be reasonable," urged Xander as Varen shrank back from Kane's verbal onslaught. "The Vulpeculans welcomed us peacefully aboard their station. Perhaps the data could have been stolen by someone else." Even as he said it, Xander doubted any third party could have defeated XR-1's cryopumped network and slipped past Earthfleet's cordon undetected. But Varen's cooperation was critical if there was any hope of recovering the lost oscillator data. Kane barked a nasty laugh. "Or perhaps our innocent dove here arranged the theft himself. He was awfully quick to accept our occupation, despite wanting to promote research over warfare." The scientist leveled an accusatory glare at Varen. "How does selling my data to the highest bidder encourage scientific progress?" "Enough speculation," said Xander firmly. "They needed facts, not more theories. Kane, compile any fragments of the Casimir data you recovered. Varen, give my captain full access to station logs and personnel records. Will run forensic data models to track this disappearance." Kane grudgingly returned his attention to the screens. But Varen hesitated, his sharp eyes troubled. The Marine guards stirred menacingly. Finally, Varen dipped his head. "Of course, Commander. We have nothing to hide." Xander peered intently at the readout, waiting for Kane's simulation to produce results. Beside him, Varen stood with head bowed in anxious thought, feathers still as stone. The physicist himself loomed behind them, glaring over their shoulders as data points cascaded across the screen. "Well? Do your smug algorithms exonerate the filthy buzzards?" Yet Kane's acid tone left little doubt regarding his personal verdict on the Vulpeculan's guilt. "The model terminated," report summary blinking expectantly. Swiveling graphs showed personnel traffic analysis, data volume flowcharts in and out of the archive nodes, revealing nothing conclusive. According to station logs, no unusual activity or alarms had occurred in the hours surrounding the disappearance. Nobody had accessed restricted systems besides Kane himself. Not one scrap of the missing terabytes had been located despite exhaustive reconnaissance of XR-1's data stores. It had simply vanished as if never existing. Xander considered himself a reasonable judge of sentience, and his gut still told him Station Director Varen seemed genuinely mystified by the loss. Perhaps Kane was right. The Vulpeculans had devised some Byzantine method to erase and transport the files that avoided any physical or network trace. But why invite the Terran occupation if they'd already secured the data? "Well, did your system catch our criminal mastermind?" Red Feathered demanded Kane acidly. Xander shook his head unhappily. "I'm afraid not, Doctor. As far as forensic reconstruction shows, nobody accessed the lab systems during the disappearance. No data movement through the station relay nodes, no anomalous traffic anywhere. It's as if the oscillator archive simply ceased to exist." Kane looked disgusted. "So much for your vaunted AI forensics," he rounded on Varen again, jabbing an accusing finger at the Vulpeculan director. "I suppose Terran fleet computers simply suffer convenient malfunctions whenever your people commit crimes. Yes." Varen spread his hands helplessly. "The data loss makes no sense to me either. However, I still contend nobody aboard XR-1 was responsible." He hesitated. "In fact, I do not believe it left our station at all." The scientists stared at him. "Explain," commanded Xander shortly. "Either the avian was spinning an elaborate hoax, or—" "I reviewed, Doctor. Kane's archived research myself when our teams first began collaborating. The avian scientist moved to the console, tapped open a simulation environment. It appeared he was exploring energy derived from quantum vacuum excitations, much like our own prior endeavors. Diaphanous fields sprang into glowing existence around Varen's fingers, elegant lattices and oscillating toruses akin to Kane's original reactor prototypes. Xander felt the first inkling of uneasy revelation. Wait, Kane looked bewildered. How could you reconstruct and visualize my work so accurately without the project data? Varen dismissed the shimmering constructions with a wave and turned to face the humans gravely. When he spoke, his voice held quiet authority. Because it was not your work alone, Dr. Kane. Our researchers discovered the foundational principles over a year ago. When we learned of your similar insights, we welcomed a chance for mutual illumination between allies. Physical distance is no impediment for those with seeing minds. Xander felt as if the deck had silently vanished beneath his boots. The avian's revelation changed everything he'd assumed about the mission. Beside him, Kane wore a look of dawning horror. As the same realization took hold, Varen spoke the truth. Whatever forced perspective trick Kane's optic nerves had played coming aboard, the Vulpeculans matched or exceeded human technical strides. An Earthfleet command would respond poorly to having its short-sighted cultural assumptions so abruptly overturned. Xander thought rapidly as Kane stammered apologies to the Vulpeculan director. This still need not end in bloodshed or interstellar incident. Cooler heads might yet prevail if the misunderstanding was explained properly. He prayed the Admiralty possessed cooler heads as Varen had demonstrated. The avians had extended a feathered hand in friendship. Fate helped them all if humanity's response was a closed fist. Captain Xander, the Marine commander, stood at stiff attention in the doorway, face grim. New orders from FleetCom via secured FTL link. He straightened even further. XR-1 is declared provisionally forfeit for suspected intelligence theft and possible espionage. Occupation rules are now fully in force. You are ordered to detain the entire Vulpeculan staff immediately to await military tribunal. Xander's heart sank. Perhaps it was already too late for diplomacy after all.